So, I think I'll just come out and say it. When I saw it in theaters, I didn't love 2019's Joker, and I absolutely should have. Although it's not entirely unique, Todd Phillips has a laser-focused vision. Joaquin Phoenix is also phenomenal, as I had hoped but also expected. Even the film's world of Gotham, which borrows heavily from Scorsese's early works, was a brutally faithful representation for fans of the comics. Everything about the movie is solid, but it didn't wow me. In fact, I felt I'd missed out on some hidden element of the movie. Phillips has persistently stated that he didn't make Joker, quote, to push buttons, but even so, it's hard to watch the film and not try to figure out exactly what it is the director is trying to say. There isn't any singularly overt message in Arthur's story. In fact, I found Joker to contradict itself on numerous levels. While Arthur's violent actions and their subsequent praise do glorify this general idea of violence, there's no goal or reform that these mobs ever achieve. They simply cause mayhem, and both Arthur's liberation and the murder of Thomas and Martha Wayne feel more like correlation than a direct consequence. Likewise, I felt that Arthur's mental breakdown was something that could have been handled more delicately. The unrelenting misery of his life does garner initial sympathy, but it's all undone by his violent tendencies, social awkwardness, and a reveal that he's an unreliable narrator.
Do you watch the Murray Franklin show?
More on that later. All of this relatability we feel towards him is washed away by the third act, and his shift from pro to antagonist is something that's intentionally disorienting. At the end of the film, I don't know what to feel towards Arthur. Everyone in Gotham appears to be rotten, and his recognition of this tragedy makes his giving way to the Joker all the more ironic. He doesn't rise above the cruelty of his surroundings, but rather becomes a symbol of that violence. And to be fair, this is foreshadowed repeatedly throughout the film.
You know what's funny? You know what really makes me laugh? I used to think that my life was a tragedy. But now I realize it's a fucking comedy.
If what Arthur is saying is true, then I must have missed Joker's punchline.
It's exit only.
With all this being said, I didn't think the film was bad by any means. Again, solid seems like the right word for my initial impressions. There isn't any one area of Joker that's lacking, and the third act is a triumphant flourish. My favorite moment, however, comes at the very end of the film. And I'm just going to pause the video right here. No, this isn't going to be one of those, it's the first time he genuinely laughs because he just made everything up to his therapist videos. I get the idea behind Phillips questioning Arthur's laugh, but I'd like to think this isn't some hour-and-a-half version of a Rick and Morty bit. As one writer puts it, this would mean that Arthur had a delusion of Sophie inside his existing delusion. That doesn't really make any sense. The final, and in my opinion, best shot of the film shows Arthur strolling down an Arkham hallway. At the end of his routine, Arthur is chased by an orderly, and the end credits show a decidedly comedic motif of a game of cat and mouse. It almost feels like a curtain call. And for me, this was when all of the pieces of Joker started to come together. See, creating an origin story for the Joker is a unique challenge, given that he's meant to be the physical embodiment of chaos. As such, one of the largest distinctions that sets him apart from other villains is his inherent lack of a backstory. The Joker's unknown origin only further cements his reputation, and fans of the comics were sure to bury the film if this wasn't respected. So, rather than use any of DC's comic storylines, Phillips instead turned to the original influences that made the character so famous. Early Scorsese works, like Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy, were undoubtedly used as a reference for Gotham itself, and Travis Bickle's fame through violence is eerily similar to Arthur's. Some of these comparisons are unabashedly apparent, and serve more as an homage to the legendary director. However, I feel like they're more used for the setting. I want to find the inspiration behind the man himself. This is The Man Who Laughs, a 1928 German film directed by Paul Lenny. It's often cited as the first mainstream horror film, and its titular character's appearance acted as a blueprint for the original concept of the Joker. Undoubtedly aware of this, Todd Phillips models Arthur after the source of Robinson's apparent inspiration. In The Man Who Laughs, Gwynplaine is the son of a French nobleman, one who is quickly betrayed by those around him. In addition to his father's murder, and an Iron Maiden, no less, a then-infant Gwynplaine is disfigured in one final joke against his family. While Philip's film isn't quite so graphic, Arthur too has a disability which forces him to laugh at inappropriate times. It's not quite an exact match, but considering the fact that we discover Arthur's condition is due to physical abuse, the parallels are impossible to ignore. Arthur is introduced to us as a working clown on the streets of Gotham. Gwynplaine, unsurprisingly, finds a life after mutilation working in the circus. Similarly to Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy, these narrative similarities in The Joker are a nice homage to past works, but they still seem a little one-dimensional. And Phillips knows this. Where Joker shines is in his deviations from these parallels. See, I had neither seen nor read The Man Who Laughs before seeing Joker. To me, the revelation that Arthur might be Thomas Wayne's son was jaw-dropping on its own. And even though it's apparently discredited, the idea that Arthur and Bruce could be illegitimate brothers adds a sick twist of irony that perfectly fits the Joker's mythos. When you would add this additional connection between Phillips' film and The Man Who Laughs, our understanding of the film contradicts the evidence we find at Arkham. Though newspapers may reveal that Arthur was adopted, it's never disputed that Gwynplaine comes from nobility. Given Thomas Wayne is depicted as shady and belligerent, is it too unreasonable to question the validity of reports that vindicate him entirely? In addition to Arthur's lineage appearing to be in direct opposition to its source material, Arthur's relationship with Murray Franklin takes a sharp left turn from its inspiration. As I said earlier, Arthur's imagining a successful and platonic interaction with Murray Franklin mirrors protagonist Rupert Pumpkin's dream of a similar event in The King of Comedy. Even the dissociative nature of the meetings are identical, with odd audiences, perfectly timed coincidences, and a general ignorance to the absurdity of the scene. However, while the idealized meetings in both films are quite similar, their real-life encounters couldn't be further apart.
We'll be back to marry them right after this work.
Pumpkin ends up kidnapping his idol in order to meet him, and it's only after he's been arrested that he achieves the fame that he so clearly desires. Arthur, on the other hand, is personally invited to appear on Murray Franklin's show. His invitation to the show directly contrasts The King of Comedy, but it also makes an interesting allusion to The Man Who Laughs. See, in the film, Gwynplaine initially returns to high society not through glory, but as a sick prank on a duchess named Josiana. Her and Gwynplaine's introduction is via a forced marriage to the noblewoman, and although she ends up falling for our outcast, he is viewed as little more than an object for her punishment. Likewise, Arthur is on the wrong end of everyone's laughter. However, while Gwynplaine ultimately finds happiness and forgiveness, Arthur instead shows a capacity for chaos and rage. There's no happy ending for him, simply because that's not the world he lives in. I love that Joker is a film rooted in past works. Gotham isn't a city filled with supervillains, but with normal criminals. There's no romanticism in the city streets, and in a place that reminds us of 1970s New York, we can't help but think of the reality surrounding it. What's more, these real-world connections make the film all the more believable. Ironically, Victor Hugo's original novel was a condemnation of French society. However, unlike Gwynplaine, Arthur isn't ever able to find a circus to accept him. Without any help from friends, family, or, God forbid, the government, the man is left to slowly devolve into insanity on his own. His actions aren't to be condoned or even related to. But to him, the only rational way to find sense of his life is through comedy. In the final shot of the film, Arthur is chased by the orderly through Arkham. And just look at the framing. This isn't a gritty Scorsese film, or even The Man Who Laughs. It's a silent comedy, a Charlie Chaplin film. The film is littered with references to this, not in plot or in character, but in the easily missed details. A TV, a poster, an exaggerated movement, all of the things that we wouldn't notice, but Arthur would. At the very end, his perspective on life appears to be creeping through just a little bit more. It wasn't until the final shot of the film that Arthur's lines started to make sense to me. But that's because I wasn't seeing things from his side.
You don't listen, do you?
I'm not sure if I'll ever fully comprehend Joker, but I do finally see the punchline. We see the orderly chasing Arthur left, sure. But is that not Arthur who's chasing him to the right? That would make a lot of sense.